Hey everyone. Last week, as I watched the news coverage of Hurricane Idalia making its way through Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas, a couple thoughts came to mind. Now, for this video, I'll set aside the personal tragedies brought on by the hurricane, not to belittle them, but because I need to focus on my core expertise for this video, the real estate. First, and I'll delve into this a little bit later in this video, another hurricane won't be good for investors' insurance rates. But the second thing that occurred to me was a reflection on some meetings I had with a significant Los Angeles real estate investor a couple years ago. He was in the process of doing seismic retrofits to mitigate earthquake risk on several of his mini Los Angeles area properties. As he made those very expensive retrofits, an important realization captured his attention. He was just one natural disaster away from effectively being knocked out of business. Virtually all of his real estate was in one metro, a metro prone to earthquakes. At that point, he contacted me for help in framing a new, geographically diversified investment strategy for his real estate portfolio. Hurricane Idalia made landfall on the Gulf Coast of Florida, not too far from where Hurricane Ian did about $112 billion of damage just 11 months ago. That reiterates something that's been in the news lately, and a concerning trend that investors should factor into their strategies. Natural disasters are becoming more frequent. Over the last 3 years, the US experienced an average of 20 disasters with a price tag in excess of $1 billion each. That's up from an average of 12.8 events per year in the 2010s and an average of 6.7 similar events per year in the 2000s. In addition, the financial impact of the disasters have increased. The $18 billion plus natural disasters that impacted the US in 2022 did about $175 billion of damage, with the vast majority of that damage affecting real estate. And there are specific areas of the country that are more susceptible to natural disasters. Of course, hurricanes come to mind. The states with the highest hurricane risk are Florida, Texas, Louisiana, and the Carolinas. But there are also wildfires. In the last 5 years through 2022, the US had 5 separate billion-dollar wildfires that caused nearly $68 billion of damages. Texas has had the most wildfire risk, followed by California, Oregon, and Oklahoma. Then there are floods. Between 2018 and 2022, the US experienced 6 floods that caused at least $1 billion of damage for a total of $28 billion. The state of Washington had the most flood insurance claims in 2022, followed by Maryland and Texas. And all these natural disasters pose 2 major challenges for commercial real estate investors. First, there's the actual damage, the loss of revenue, the cost of repairs, and the time and energy that goes into cleaning up and repairing the impacted properties. Even though the repairs and lost revenue may be covered by insurance, the damages will still cost investors time, short-term cash flow, and undoubtedly, the whole process will involve a fair amount of brain damage. But the other way the increasing number and severity of natural disasters is impacting investors is through rising insurance costs. Our research team highlighted the challenges posed by rising insurance costs in a report that we released a few weeks ago, and you can find that on our website. Nationally, homeowners insurance has gone up by more than 12% in the last year. And in some markets, real estate insurance has gone up by 40, 50, or even 60% in the last year. I only have insurance cost data on apartments, which is tracked by our friends at RealPage, but I suspect the effects on other types of commercial real estate are similar. On average, US apartment insurance costs went up by about 33% last year. In San Diego, they only went up by about 8%. But in Jacksonville, Florida, insurance costs went up by about 65%. Now, I do have to point out that while the percentage increases in some metros may be huge, the actual dollar amount may still be comparatively low in that market. For example, Jacksonville insurance rates, even after going up so much, are still below the insurance costs in Tampa or Houston. But still, This should be a significant consideration for investors, not just the cost of insurance, but the risks natural disasters pose to investors, and how important geographic diversification can be. This is a little different from stock portfolio diversification, where investors try to reduce volatility. In the case of real estate, an investor who's not geographically diversified could have their short-term cash flow driven to zero by just one natural disaster. So as real estate investors, we need to consider more than the usual economic and business drivers like local job creation, population migration, new supply risks, and vacancy rates. Going forward, we also need to consider natural disaster risk and insurance costs, because investors need to consider the big picture. As always, investors need to keep their eyes on the horizon.